questions until the end of the presentation, but if you are having any trouble seeing anything, you can just shoot me a chat message and I will do my best to see it. Okay, so let me just... So welcome to our first Law Quarter Energy webinar. The presentation will run for 30 minutes and then we will have a short Q&A afterwards. So embedded networks are quite a hot topic at the moment. They're certainly on the rise. The regulators have noticed this increase in embedded networks and reviewed the regulations that were in existence in relation to them and have amended them. So I could talk about embedded networks for hours probably. It would be very boring for everyone probably. But this presentation is going to really review some of the changes with embedded networks and metering at a high level. So, what is an embedded network? Basically, an embedded network are private electricity networks that are connected to distribution and transmission systems. They're used in apartment blocks, retirement villages, caravan parks and shopping centres, and basically they are the wiring that runs through the development and allows the owner of the apartment block or development, caravan park to provide energy to the residents. As I said earlier, they're on the increase, and this is partly due to the increase in smart home technology. The regulator in its reviews and reports have commented that there are partnerships being developed between providers of smart home like Telstra and energy providers to incorporate increased services and utility for the customers in managing and maintaining their energy needs. So, under the current system, an embedded network operator was classed as an exempt seller. So they didn't need to have the full retail authorization. Rather, they fell within exemption classes and were therefore treated in a different category to the authorised retailers, and there were less rigorous conditions that applied and also less enforcement options, if you like, for the regulators. A brownfield conversion is also known as a retrofit, and there are special provisions that will apply to brownfield conversions. This occurs when a new developer or property owner buys an apartment block or a shopping centre and wants to put in an embedded network. The main thing, the important part in relation to a brownfield conversion is the explicit informed consent of the residents. There are specific procedures in place in relation to obtaining explicit informed consent and recording it, and the regulator needs to see that the residents of a brownfield conversion are fully aware of the embedded network going in and that they've consented. Also importantly, the resident is not forced to use the embedded network, but it is important that the resident is allowed the option of using another energy retailer. So the push behind a lot of the regulatory changes was the identification of some limitations and some issues around the regulation of embedded networks. As I mentioned earlier, there were limited enforcement options, and a very important driving factor was the lack of choice for customers, or a perceived lack of choice. There were questions around the application of the Australian consumer law. There were issues around dispute resolution, particularly in relation to the various ombudsman schemes and embedded network operators being exempt sellers. And there were also questions around the use of agents to monitor and engage with customers. So the major reform was called Power of Choice, and as the name probably suggests, it's about giving consumers choice in relation to their energy supply and also in relation to their energy usage. So it's about providing low cost energy combined with demand and supply options. The main there are two elements to this that I'm going to look at today. It's in relation to the changes for embedded networks, and it's also a brief look at the changes in relation to metering. Okay. So I don't know how well you can see that, but this is an infographic that was provided by the AEMC just to give an outline of the Power of Choice review. The regulators have been very good in providing information sheets and infographics, and it gives you an idea, I guess, of the changes. And as I said, the main thrust is around providing consumers with better choices or more choices, and trying to provide less costly options. Of course, as we know, the price of energy is dictated by a number of factors, and it's not simply a matter of choosing a retailer. There's all sorts of other factors, but it's part of what the regulators are looking to do. The AEMO rule change request was in response to the Power of Choice review, and the main thrust of the rule change was in relation to an embedded network manager role being introduced. This is a new role in the energy space, and provides a breaker, if you like, or a person that will be sitting between the embedded network operator and the customer to provide the customers with the information and service. And I just wanted to do this, that's okay. So in order for an embedded network operator to be eligible for the exemption, they will have to appoint an embedded network manager by the 1st of December. And if you don't mind, I just have to ask a question. I will be back. in one. Sorry about that. I just wanted to check, and I probably should have earlier, that everyone could see and hear me. As I mentioned, the Embedded Network Manager will be the contact point between the customers and the embedded network operator. Now, this slide is a bit text heavy, but it basically goes over the requirements. I will make the PowerPoint presentation available to everyone after the presentation. The important thing about the Embedded Network Manager is that they have to be registered, and there are quite specific requirements around the registration of Embedded Network Manager. So embedded network operators can't just appoint anyone to be an embedded network manager. They have to be authorised and registered embedded network manager. There are guidelines that have been published in relation to what the requirements are, and I have written a longer paper that looks at the requirement for an embedded network manager, and I'm happy to make that available to anyone if they haven't already received it. Basically, the embedded network manager is required to have a knowledge of the various procedures and policies that apply in the energy space. They have to have a meeting with the regulator, and they have to provide information so that the regulator is satisfied that they will be able to fulfill this role. It's a very important role. There are, as far as I know, and I've been tracking this, I haven't seen the Embedded Network Manager registration site being set up yet. The registrations won't occur or apply until the 1st of December. There are some people out there advertising themselves as an embedded network manager. In my view, they can't really be doing that yet, as far as I'm aware, and I could be wrong. Nobody has actually been authorised or registered yet. Now, I looked a couple of weeks ago, that may have changed, but I think that there will probably be a rush around the 1st of December in this space. People who want to become an embedded network manager should be looking at the requirements now and getting in touch with the regulator so that their applications are all in place and they're able to offer the services to embedded network operators. I envisage that there will be certain embedded network operators that will employ their own embedded network manager within their own organisation and have someone that is authorised. And then there will be other operators that will use the services of a third party, a vendor who is providing the services of an embedded network operator. The rules have been changed or amended to incorporate this role. There are requirements around this role, and it will be an important role going forward. And as I said, for embedded network operators to qualify for the exemption, they will need to have an embedded network manager. There are certain requirements around who needs to have an embedded network manager or not, and that's covered in my longer paper. So I was saying before that there are documents available. So these are two of the documents that are available. The qualification procedure. So metering providers, metering data providers, embedded network operators or managers, I think they should be, are all new roles that have come out under the rules. They've also provided an accreditation checklist so that people who are applying will be able to make sure that they've got all the documents that they need and all the information. There is a lot of reading that the regulator expects an embedded network manager to be across. So I think that early preparation for this role is really important. Now, of course, there'll be people in the industry with a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge of energy rules and regulations that will be able, probably, to quite easily register for these roles. But it's important if you're engaging an embedded network manager after 1 December that they are registered and that you check that on the regulator's website. So the AEMC have done a review of the regulatory framework for embedded networks. On this slide, you can see that there were 4 core questions for stakeholders. It was whether it was fit for purpose, access to retail market offers be improved, consumer protections that should apply, and are current regulatory arrangements for gas embedded networks appropriate. They're the issues that they saw as being important for the review. So there has been a final rule which will create a new accredited provider rule, which is the embedded network manager that I have been talking about. So as I said, the embedded network manager has specific functions and duties under the energy rules, and there are requirements as to which embedded network operators are required to appoint an embedded network manager, and it comes down around number of customers and things like that. So the next issue I wanted to have a look at is metering, because there have also been changes, or there will be changes introduced around metering as part of the power of choice reforms. And much like embedded networks, a new role has been created in the metering, or a couple of new roles created in the metering space. And an important part about the changes to the metering rules is that the model terms and conditions of standard retail contracts and deemed standard connection contracts will need to be amended to incorporate the changes. Now, I had a look yesterday and I couldn't see the updated terms and conditions, but that will probably be a bit closer to the relevant date, which is 1 December 2017. And as this slide says, minimum service standards have been introduced for all new and replacement meters that are installed for small customers. So if you, after 1 December, if you replace a meter or install a new meter, that meter will have to comply with certain standards that are set out, they don't refer to them as smart meters per se, but rather the new regulations include, I think it's 4 or 5 requirements that the meters that are installed will have to comply with. Oh, here we go. I should have flicked on to my next slide. These are the minimum service specifications that the meter will have to comply with. There's a lot of information, documents provided by the regulators in this space. So if you go on to the various websites, AER, AEMC, you will find the detailed information around this. But again, it's something that people will need to be conscious of if they are planning to install new meters after 1 December or have to upgrade a meter after 1 December. I would imagine that the people that currently provide meters and metering services will be across all these changes and will ensure that the meters are compliant. But as with all these things, at the end of the day, it's the retailer or the embedded network operator that will be responsible for ensuring that the rules and regulations are complied with. So, the changes will be incorporated into new CAPS procedures, principles and obligations. Again, I had a look a couple of days ago. The new procedure isn't available yet. It will facilitate the provision of choice of retailer within embedded networks and will align with the obligations for NMIs in embedded networks. You can, for more information around that, look at the AMO Embedded Network Guideline and the AEMC Final Rule Determination. Here's a couple of other infographics that have been provided by the regulator to give an idea of the roles and the relationship between these new metering roles, the customer and the energy provider. And as I said, I will be providing a copy of this PowerPoint to everyone. So the new role in relation to metering is a metering coordinator, and like the embedded network operator, the metering coordinator will be required to be registered and authorised and has a specific role to play in relation to how meters are dealt with by retailers and embedded network operators. So again, they will expect a metering coordinator to have a knowledge of all the rules and regulations relevant to metering and to the energy sector generally, and there are specific functions that the metering coordinator will be required to fulfill in their role. And again, it is about the relationship with the customer, there being more management, I guess, around that relationship and the role, and that customers have choice, and I guess they have a voice in this sector. I guess there's some view that in the embedded network sector, the customer doesn't always have the voice that customers in the general retail sector have. I don't have a view on that, but I think that has been motivating the regulator. And of course, the explicit informed consent, it's quite, I don't know if onerous is the right word. I guess it depends where you're looking from. But there are quite specific requirements around explicit informed consent in terms of what you have to advise the customer of, how you obtain explicit informed consent, and how you record it. So these are all things that people that operate with embedded networks need to be across. And with a number of people providing embedded networks who are not necessarily experienced in the energy retail business, I think it's a way to ensure that people operating in that space are across all the rules and regulations. So the metering coordinator, and I guess that it'll become known as MC, much like the embedded network manager will become known as the ENM, because we all love acronyms. They're very useful. So their key responsibilities are outlined in clause 7.3.1 of the National Energy Rules, and as this slide shows, it's around provision, installation and maintenance of a metering installation, the collection, processing, retention and delivering of metering data, and the management of access to and security of the metering installation. There's an AMO guide to the role of the metering coordinator, which will explain in more detail what's required. One of the interesting discussions around meters at the moment, and smart meters in particular, is the protection and use of the information that is collected by the smart meter. That's a little bit off topic, but it is interesting, and retailers and embedded network operators will need to be conscious of the information and protecting the information that's collected by a smart meter. So it's been put to me that all embedded network operators have to install a smart meter, that these changes say they have to install a smart meter. My reading of the rule changes is it's not a smart meter, it's a meter that complies with those requirements, which may be a smart meter, I guess, but it's only if you are installing or replacing a meter after 1 December. So my reading of it is that you don't have to remove the meters that you have now, but that the meters that you install or replace after that date do have to be compliant. I'm happy if someone says that well, I wouldn't be happy if someone said I was wrong on that, but I'd be open to someone having a different interpretation of those rules. But as I say, as far as I can see, if you're going to be doing changes or replacing meters after that date, then they will have to be compliant meters. So, brings us to the end of